I had worked at some as a web designer or graphic designer in various places, Saatchi and Saatchi and different .coms and such. And then I went on to Monotype thereafter, where I worked for about 5 years. After that, I went freelance, or you might want to say sole proprietor. And that was in tune with their layoffs when the when the downturn in the economy hit at that time, back in 2008. And that's kind of where I'm coming from with all this. Okay, and at this point, I'd like to kick it over to you, Kaz. We can stay on this screen if you want, or go back to the other one. But if you'd go ahead and like to field the questions. And thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I'm really happy to share my knowledge and my experience about running a Foundry and starting a Foundry and all that stuff. So
that's great. Thanks, Delv. Since everybody is on a computer right now and you are free to Command Tab over to a web browser or something, highly recommend just going on the Delv Fonts website and seeing some of the work that Delv has done. My personal favorite is Continuo. I really love the inline fonts there. But one of the things you also do is, it's not just you. You work with a handful of really great type designers, kind of a collective, even though the company itself is your namesake. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how that works, because it seems like so much of that is dependent. Like, these people are all over the world, or all over the country, right? And you kind of, it's one thing to say you run a type foundry and you sell typefaces, but clearly so much of that can be done just from home. And if you're like myself, or maybe like a lot of people here in attendance in the audience, right now type design is, I consider myself more of a hobbyist. It's something I do out of general interest because I work with type a lot. But I'm really interested in that leap from just being a type hobbyist who does this stuff at home, to actually creating a business out of it. Finding clients, putting yourself out there. What are the steps? And you started this 20 years ago, so I imagine the landscape has changed a bit in time. But to people who are maybe have the ambition to start their own type studio, and they don't want to rent offices, they don't want to kind of go out and establish the traditional office, but instead want to design type for a living and be able to run that sort of business more out of their home or that situation. Can you just speak to how you make that leap? Because to some people, I think that seems like a chasm you have to get across. Like, how do I go from just being a hobbyist to being an actual independent business owner doing this particular thing?
Yes, you're right. It does seem like a more insurmountable thing. Am I back on video, or am I still sharing that screen?
You are still sharing the screen.
Okay, how do I do that? How do I get back over?
If you go up to the top, there should be a little option to stop sharing.
Oh, pause, okay, or stop sharing. Yeah. There we go. Back on video now?
Yes.
Okay, good. Well, first of all, thanks for the interest. Yeah, when you're at that point where you have that interest, you have that burning desire to make typefaces, and perhaps you even made some fonts, and you've got some out there. But making that leap from creating them and selling them to making it a full-time business, or whatever whatever you're interested in doing, you're right. It's absolutely it's hard. It's hard to know what the next step is, and I don't want to get too into the sticks with business stuff. But I will have to talk about some of that. And one of the things I think I should point out is actually, if I could flip it back real quick to my screen, that way I can just go through some slides here, and we can hit those points pretty quickly. Sorry, I am new to this, so I'm going to just share and hit that again. And okay, so okay. Are you seeing me and the?
I see. We see your slide that says things to consider.
Okay, good. Okay. So yeah, some things to consider when you are at this point. Okay, really, what level of commitment are you interested in putting in? Um, you know, how much time can you devote to it? Are you really in a position to make that leap to full time? Are you only going to do this on the weekends? Is it going to be a part time gig where you're also maybe work for someone else at the same time? So with that in mind, if you only want to design type sometimes, it might be a good idea to consider doing it on a contractual or a freelance basis. Okay. And this can kind of ease you into making type for clients, but also it can kind of kick you into the production gear, into gear for production of typefaces with deadlines, right? Um, so anything to speed you up and make you more efficient, light a fire under your butt, so they say. Uh, Upshots here are you get to draw typefaces and you're going to get paid for them, right? Now, something to bear in mind is that if you are working on a contractual or freelance basis, a lot of the time that stuff is considered work for hire. So there's the question of who owns the IP that you develop for that, right? So I would say to that, make sure that in your contract with your client or with the agency that you might be working with, that you have the rights to the typeface that you make. Okay. Self-publishing is an option when you're doing it this way. You can have a web page with a little shop attached, maybe a Shopify thing or whatever. Or you could find a foundry. I'm not going to advocate for my own here. There are so many foundries out there that you guys can you have lots of choices. You can contact a foundry and see if they would like to carry it as part of their library. And I'll go over some of the some of the best parts about publishing with a foundry in a separate piece here. You can also sell through distributors. In other words, you're not necessarily publishing it through them. They're just taking it on, kind of like I don't know, if you were to go with, say, Creative Market or something like that, where you have your own shop on there. Again, you're leveraging their platform, so it's good that way. But there are no real benefits, or you're not getting a regular paycheck there, of course, unless you've got a good gig with an agency going on or a steady client. So you're going to be setting up your own benefits if you're going for that full-time thing. No business entity is required. If you're freelance, it's kind of like a default sole proprietorship. So it's still pretty simple, and you're not really committing to a lot of paperwork and other things. If you wish to design type part-time or go into it more full-time, one thing you can do is to work for a type foundry. So find someone who is a smaller type foundry or even a larger one, and keep an eye on their job postings, or even inquire with them directly. Hey, are you hiring? Do you need help? Help, whatever you're interested. If you're an artist, you're a type designer, you want to draw, maybe they need some more hands in the pie there, and you can catch some work that way, and get a glimpse into their workflow, their production techniques, and get a good taste for the production that way. Upshots, you get to drop typefaces and you're getting paid. Learn production and all the foundry operations that they will let you be privy to. You enjoy some regular pay, and if you're full-time or even part-time, depending on the state you're in, here we are in California, this stuff you get paid for, right? You get benefits. It may vary between places, how much you get and what benefits they offer. You can publish your fonts with the foundry, potentially. If they're interested in seeing your work and you want to publish your own designs with them, then you can hash something out. But typically the work that you do for a foundry, the production work on somebody else's design is going to be work for hire. You will not own that IP, okay? So you won't have any royalties coming from that. You would if it were your own typeface. If it was one of your designs that you published through that foundry, you would get royalties on that. One of the better parts about having it published through a foundry, like I was hinting to before, is that they handle all of this stuff with the sales and the distributors and sales taxes and things like that, that it gets kind of messy and complicated and all that. Maybe that's not what you want to do, so you'd rather just collect the royalties. That's kind of the way to go. Go through a foundry, or make sure it's coming from someplace where you don't have to deal with that stuff. I would say be wary of employment agreements. Sometimes they have things written in there where you cannot produce your own typefaces or sell your own typefaces outside of your job with that company. So that's just something to be on the lookout for. And two would be a sole proprietorship. This could also be a part-time or even a full-time thing, depending on how far you want to go with it. Again, you get to draw typefaces and you get paid. Well, you know, if it's a sole proprietorship, you have to pay yourself, right? You're kind of paying yourself, so you can be your own boss and pay yourself as much as you want out of the revenue from the sales. Easy and affordable to start and maintain. If you don't have a head for a business and you're really not interested in going that far with it, then sole proprietorship's pretty easy and not too difficult to maintain it. You can self-publish your fonts. You can also sign up with distributors. You got no restrictions here, right? Because it's your business. It's your dealio. And one of the downsides is that you're subject to self-employment tax. You guys are probably already familiar with that if you've ever done any contract work or freelancing. Sole proprietorship is much the same. You're going to be subject to that self-employment tax. Now, if you want to go all the way and you want to go full-time or even more in some cases, especially if it's only you running the business, as it is with me, you can establish a business formally. You could form an LLC or a corporation or some other entity. And again, you get to draw typefaces. You're sensing a theme here. This is the best part, right? It's not cheap and it's not easy to start a business this way. There's lots of paperwork. There are taxes and licenses to do. Yeah, it gets complicated. There's a lot more overhead. So in terms of time that you devote to maintaining the business and to really keeping the business afloat, sometimes even giving up some of your own salary in order to fund the business. Because, you know, if it's just you operating the business, then it's kind of still, it's almost like a sole proprietorship with benefits. I just said it's more overhead and work to maintain. The business structure and the tax elections you choose can potentially save you money over being a sole proprietorship, okay? So I would strongly advise talking to a business attorney and a tax advisor before you make a decision about this stuff, or even just, you know, your brother or your uncle or your wife or whoever has the knowledge in your family about running a business, you know, and see what they have to say, just so that you can kind of get a sense for which direction you might go in and what you would tolerate in terms of your commitment to operating the business side of things. One big upshot here is that you get what they call a corporate veil. This protects you from some liability. It protects you from things like bankruptcy. And when I say liability, I mean, you know, if a client decides to sue you because something went bad, you know, you didn't include the E in your font, and well, you know, they might sue you.
Has
I'm
that
joking
happened to you?
about that, of course. No, no, that's never happened to me. I always put the E in there, but no, I've never been sued either. And it it also allows you to keep your personal property and your personal finances separate from your business and protected that way. Okay, so you know, if you have to declare bankruptcy in your business, you do not lose your house, you do not lose your car, things like that. Instead, it's the corporation or your company that's declaring bankruptcy, not you. So those are the things to consider. Okay, I know that's a lot, but you have to know that before you have to think about these things before you step into the fray. Now that's not going to keep you from drawing. You can always just draw typefaces. You can always just draw fonts. Okay, so that's one of those things that it's, don't let the business part of it hold you back. Right? If you want to draw. All right, I'm going to stop sharing this for now and go back to video.
That's awesome, Delv. And I'd really like you to spend the next hour just really breaking down California tax law and all of the things that we have to be conscious of when we're running our own type foundries here. So have at it. No, one thing, no, because we came here to talk about type and beautiful typefaces, and the business side of it definitely matters, especially if you're running your own type foundry. And as you do run a type foundry, but it's as anyone who can look at your website or has kind of worked with you or knows is like you work with a lot of really talented type designers, and those people don't have to be local anymore. They're around the country,
That's right.
They're around the world.
Mm-hmm.
And so one question that Winston asks, and maybe you can speak to, is when it comes to deciding to partner with, and I use the term partner loosely because I know in the world of business, like partnership has a specific meaning, and I'm not sure how that applies to the way you do it. But if a type designer is looking to work with you, or let's say somebody submits a typeface to your foundry, like
Mm-hmm.
what are you looking for? Obviously, you have kind of an ethos or an approach to what you want Delv fonts to represent, and the level of quality or the level of, for lack of a better term, the aesthetic quality of what the typefaces that have your company name attached to it exude. So talk a little bit about like how these relationships or these partnerships work for you.
Sure. Yeah. So for first and foremost, I love collaborating with people, and that's been one of the drivers for me to work with other designers and publish their fonts. Now, because obviously, I mean, working from home, as we're all experiencing now, can be kind of lonely sometimes. I'm fortunate that I have my family here, and I'm going to stick with that, and that's good. But for those of you who may be on your own, and it can kind of get a little lonely. So yeah, when you can collaborate with others, even if it's remotely, it's gratifying, more gratifying than just working by yourself, and you don't end up talking to your cats quite as much, like some friends of mine do. Yeah, no, but yeah. uh, yes, I do talk to my cats. I think they know. I think I understand them pretty well too. So after all this time, and well, so that's one of the main drivers for me is simply to be able to collaborate and to be in communication with other people who I respect and whose work I admire. Now, in terms of choosing a typeface to publish, and with whom, I'd like to make sure I get along with these people, right? Because you're getting into a relationship with them, albeit a professional, relationship, a business relationship. But if you can't, if you're just not getting along, then it can be difficult. And not every working relationship that I've tried to establish has worked out. Some don't, and that's okay. That's par for the course. Not every one of them will. I'm happy to say that the largest percentage of them do, and I've enjoyed great working relationships with Joachim Mueller-Lancet, Stephen Skaggs, and Zandra Zamora and Dave Bailey especially. These are just wonderful people, and I'm really fortunate to be able to work with them. Now, in terms of selecting the typeface, you have to kind of put on your marketer's hat. You have to put on that designer eye and try to look at it objectively, not just what you love, right? But then, you think, okay, well, is this going to be something that other designers can make use of? You also, if you're building a collection, a library, kind of like what I've been doing, then you have to consider, does it fit, right? Does it is it the odd man out? Almost like when you're designing a typeface. I'm sure if you've taken your hand at this, you understand that sometimes and as you've seen in the critiques there at Type Thursday, that sometimes that odd character, that one that has too much personality, perhaps doesn't fit in the typeface, or the rest of the typeface doesn't fit with it, and you need to change the whole thing to fit with that one because that's the winner, you know? It's kind of that way with selecting a typeface to put into the library collection that you may end up carrying if you're going to produce lots of typefaces. And I'm not saying that you should try to make things all look alike. That's worked out well for some people. Some people enjoy making calligraphic scripts, and that's what they're known for, and they do them very well. Other people have done some beautiful sans serif designs, and they do them, you know, just so, I mean, so amazingly beautiful that you know, you almost can't touch it, right? But that's what they do. I have taken more of a broader, more generalist approach in terms of curating the library. I want to make sure that, well, one of my top criteria is that it's original work, and we're not just retrotting old ground and you know, kind of just revisiting things that have already been done. But so I look for that kind of innovation, that spark of originality in there, and try to really make that the more prominent thing in the type that I see. So I'm putting on type designer, you know, marketer's hat, and the type director's kind of, you know, all rolled into one here. You're always wearing many hats if you're a solo business owner. So it gets a little complex like that. It's hard to remove your own design sensibilities from what you might see in other people's work. But I think that there's also you can use that when you're making decisions, but then you have to set that aside and understand that they're bringing strengths and differences in aesthetics to the work that you couldn't do otherwise. You know, maybe it just wouldn't occur to you to make a capital F that way, or it wouldn't occur to you to consider adding more weight to this particular portion of the stroke, where other designers will happily jump in there and do that and not give it a second thought, but they wouldn't think to do things the way you did.
Right.
So I think it enriches the entire collection if you're adding other people's work in. And if you're pursuing running a foundry, I would say, you know, publish your own designs by any means, but also consider working with other people. I think you'll have a richer experience all around, not just for the work itself, but then your relationships with other people as well.
Yeah,
Does
absolutely.
that answer all of? I don't think I answered all of your
Well,
questions, but I think
obviously
I was
it's a
thorough.
very broad topic, and I
Yeah.
encourage you know, anyone in the channels that are available to reach out to Delve if there's anything to elaborate on. Kind of tailing off that question, Michelle in the chat does ask, like, you know, as someone who runs a foundry and kind of has to be the you know, the final say on whether or not this typeface is Delve Fonts quality. You know, are there some basic signs for you that a font is like really well made versus a font that's just, you know, maybe it's not terrible, but it's just okay, or like maybe it's not up to? Because one thing I really respect about Delve Fonts is that it's not an endless list of faces. It feels very curated. If anyone goes on to Delve Fonts right now, like the most recent one, Tome Sans, is gorgeous. You know, I have to say,
Thank you.
I was looking at today. But yeah, there's some really great stuff on there. But for me, one of the hallmarks of really great type foundries that are just on top of their game is that they don't. It's like going to a restaurant and seeing just a handful of things on the menu, and knowing that rather than getting an infinite amount or just an endless amount of stuff, you have a much more honed and refined amount of things. But each thing on that list is just of impeccable quality. So
Oh, thank you, sir.
yeah. So
Yeah.
how do you like if you're working with a designer, or you're looking at like those fine details about what, you know, what really feels like up to par, what do you look for? What kind of meets
Yeah.
your list
Yeah.
there?
Thanks for that question, Michelle. And what I would say is that it's not as straightforward as you might think. So as the so I mean, basically, it's me. Although I have worked very closely with Dave Bailey as a contractor in the recent past, and hope to do so again real soon. It's he has a really good eye for that kind of stuff too. But to answer the question more directly, since I'm in charge, I can. I mean, I'm doing a lot of the work myself, and so I'm looking for the design. I'm looking for a really good design because I know that myself I have the technical proficiency to kind of bring it home. I can take that design, I can fine tune it, make it optimized for use as a font, in vector format for font, and then also do the spacing, the kerning, the hinting, anything that's necessary to to um, kind of bring that to a commercial grade level font. Not, one of the free downloads where you kind of get what you pay for kind of stuff. I mean, I've produced my own fair share of those, when I was getting started. I will definitely admit to that. But in order to produce a commercial grade font, you're right. There are some technical, you know, uh, bits that you really have to finagle and get just right so that it performs well and equally in Macintosh and Windows and Libre and what have you. So yeah, there's quite a bit of that I do behind the scenes. I don't list myself as production person on that stuff. I don't. That's not the way I want to do things. So I give the designer full billing on that. That's their design. There wouldn't be a font without their design. And likewise, if I hire a contractor to help do the production work, they don't usually get that credit. Although I have started doing that now, so I need to go back through some of those PDFs and things and list them. Because although I was thinking I still wouldn't do that for myself, call myself out on that stuff, but I think it's only fair that they get credit for that as well. Dave Bailey being one of them. So yeah, there's that. And insofar as looking for that kind of quality in the design, it's very subjective, isn't it? I mean, we're designers and we see something that we like. I have to put on that marketer's hat. I have to look at the market and consider, is it something that I think would sell? And I don't mean that just because I'm looking to get rich. If anybody's in type to get rich, it's a long shot, right? You can do well, you can, don't get me wrong. Plenty of people have. But the work has to be good. You have to be selling it for the right price. You have to be selling it in the right place. You have to know people. There are all those things, almost like in any business. But when I put on that marketer's hat, I consider not just would it sell because I want to recoup my expenses on it, but because I want that designer to feel good about it. Because they've trusted me to produce their typeface for them and bring it to market. And it's a long-term investment for all of us involved, right? You're kind of, it's a speculative venture. You're betting that this one typeface is going to, over time, hopefully sooner rather than later, recoup your expenses that you've invested into it, so you get an ROI. But then also that that designer can see some healthy royalties coming in. I don't feel bad at all about writing those royalty checks. I love it. I love sending those people that I work with that money because it makes me feel good that we could accomplish something like that together. So
Yeah, it's kind of just
yeah,
that same thing.
I don't mean to ramble. Sorry.
No, absolutely. It's really great to get some insight into this, but it seems like the common thread, whether you're talking about just type design or graphic design or product design or really anything, is that at a certain point there's a difference between just being able to draw or make something that looks really cool
Yeah.
versus being able to handle all of those sometimes boring under the hood details that
Oh
elevates it
man.
from just a cool design into an actual sellable product or something
Yeah.
that is ready to ship. Delve, I could talk to you for hours about this subject, but I am gonna.
I know we have people who want to show their work right
Yeah,
now.
I'm going to end this right now because
too.
we do have 2 other presenters who have some really amazing work to show and get some critique
Fair
on.
enough.
So I just want to give a big hand to Delve and really thank you for coming in to talk to us about this. And
thanks everybody for listening. I hope you got
we'll
something
see
out
you
of it.
at future events. And just learn some more. Thanks a lot, Delve.
And by the way, if anybody has any other questions, feel free to shoot them to me. I'm going to try to look in the chat, but then also I'm Delve at Delve Fonts or hello at Delve Fonts, whichever, just shoot me an email, or I think I'm on TT Slack for those of you on TT. You can reach me, give me a call. My number's on the website, so whatever.
Awesome. Yeah,
Right,
and
thank you.
Tome Sands, check it out.
Yay.
Thanks a lot, Delve.
All right, thank you.
All right, so we are now going to move on to the critique. So critique is going to function a little bit differently. Obviously, I said, please mute your mics at the start. Didn't mean to cut off everyone chatting with each other when they came in. The reason we wanted to mute our mics is because we just want to be able to not turn it into a free-for-all of everybody yelling over the video. So when we present, we're going to have our presenters, they'll talk for 5 minutes or so and show their awesome work. But we really want to make sure that there's, some order to how questions and comments raise in. Normally in the live event, people raise their hand and they call them. We can't do that here. So what we're asking is that if you have a question or a comment or some advice for the presenter, just go ahead and type your name or have a comment. If it's a short comment, just go ahead and type it in the chat. But if it's something you want to elaborate on, please just put your name in, say I have a comment, or even just type your name. I'm paying attention to the chat and I will be sure to call on you. So that you have a chance to kind of speak directly to the presenter as they present their work. So our first presenter is going to be Kunal Patel, and some of you may have seen him on Instagram. He goes under the handle Letters of San Francisco. And what he does is he takes pictures or captures instances of lettering in the city, kind of all around, and, really kind of isolates individual letters and letter forms. Separates them out on their own and just shows that there's so much just art and type design just built into the municipal structure of the city itself. And now he's decided to take a lot of what he's done and actually turn it into a book project. But he has some questions about kind of, what's the most interesting. There's a lot of directions he could go, and he's just kind of looking for some focus. So Kunal, are you here with us right now?
Yeah, I am.
Everybody say hi to Kunal. Kunal, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen so that you can share your work and present it. Cool?
Sure. Thanks, guys.
Go ahead.
Okay. Can everyone see my presentation, hopefully?
Yep, I can see it.
Great. Thanks for the intro, Cass. So yeah, my name is Kunal Patel. I'm an interaction designer by trade and a longtime lettering enthusiast. And I'm here today to get feedback about a project I've been working on basically kind of since I moved to San Francisco. And as Kaz mentioned, I like kind of going around the city and kind of capturing interesting letter forms, I find. So just kind of looking at these 2 characters here, there's a lot to take in. You've got some really pleasing and maybe surprising curves, like in the F, these sort of like split serifs. There's some depth to it. It's really interesting. And I think the last place one would think to look for this kind of work is on the side of a Muni bus depot, but there it was up in North Beach. And this idea of kind of finding interesting letter forms throughout the city, kind of picking my favorite letters and digitally kind of sharing them, recreating them and sharing them is kind of at the heart of Letters of San Francisco. And over the last few years, I've built up this collection. I'm closing in on, I think, almost 500 now. And I've started working on ideas for a book. I think it would be a great way to kind of document the project and kind of put a cap on it. But my main problem is I have too many ideas. Obviously this is something that I've put a lot of time and thought and energy into. And there's so many different directions that I could take it based on what I've learned and kind of what's stood out to me. So I wanted to get some feedback from the community about the project and kind of share some of the things that have really stood out to me about working on it over the years and get a sense from you all, based on the topics that I'll try to speed through pretty quickly. Basically, just what do you find interesting? I'm just looking for a directional signal right now. We're not going to look at layouts or a chapter outline or a structure for a book. I'm just going to try to share high level snippets of things that have stood out to me about doing this and that I enjoy. And I'm hoping to hear from all of you about what interests you and what haven't I covered. So a good place to start might be like, where does an idea like this even come from? It's kind of weird. It's maybe a little bit outside of collections of vernacular typography or street photography or lettering. And so for me, I moved to San Francisco in the winter of 2016 from the East Coast, and arriving from like an East Coast winter to California was like getting color TV for the first time. And I had that kind of sensation where I was really taken in by all of the kind of bright, vibrant colors of the city, and that extended to its typography as well. Maybe that photo of the Grand Theater is maybe the second or third photo I took as a resident of San Francisco. And on my kind of early walks around the city, I just found myself photographing lots of colorful buildings and signage as well. And after a while of doing that, I'd been looking for a way to get back into drawing and find an outlet for my interest in lettering. And so I decided to start using the signs that I'd been photographing as a way to practice, recreating some of my favorite letter forms, just as a short activity to do while I would have morning coffee. And eventually the idea kind of popped in my head of, oh, you know what, maybe I could put together this alphabet print of the city, have this single kind of set of A to Z letters that I could make a nice kind of cap for this thing and time box it really well. And it wasn't for a few months that I actually thought, hey, you know what, let me try adding color back into this. And it really started to come alive for me at this point. It really felt a lot more fun and engaging to start working some of the real life kind of application back in. But this was probably, a year, 18 months into it, and I hadn't really made a lot of progress on this. I was finding myself kind of stuck with it. And so in 2018 is when I started the Instagram account with the idea that I would post one new letter from around the city every day, which was a tremendous challenge, but I was able to kind of make it through that year and wind up at the end of 2018 with a collection of like 365 letters. And something that's interesting about that is when your sample size goes from something like 10 to 100 is you start to be able to step back, zoom out a little bit, and look over a collection and see what kind of patterns emerge. And given my sort of early interest really in typography and lettering and these more compositional forms, it was fun to start seeing how did different people approach a similar challenge. So whether that was the letter G and building this little library for myself of examples, or looking at types of businesses that tend to have the same words in their titles. So tattoo shops or liquor stores or pizzeria, I started having this survey of all these different solutions people had to the same problem. But over time, I think my interest and my recreations of these physical forms went from being this sort of more flat, very sort of maybe traditional type graphic to really embracing all of the environmental qualities that the typography had in context. So it may be surprising, but these are both from the same sign. They're both the letter R from the Castro Theater sign. The one on the left I did probably in late 2016, and the one on the right I did earlier this year. And you can just see how much richer The one on the right is bringing in the sign as well. And I don't really know what to call this category, but I'll call it in situ, leaning on my architecture background a little bit. I think what's been really fun for me the last few years and really challenging to do as a designer is recreating more of the physical qualities that make letters in context really shine. So for neon, I actually really love neon signs during the day. I think it's the best way to see the skill and the craft that goes into it. So how are the tubes bent? Are they trying to match the painted letter forms behind them, if one exists? I really had to train my eye on details like how is neon coming in and out of a structure? What are the housings look like for these on a sign? For kind of tile, mosaic, and terrazzo work, these are a big effort for me sometimes. I think this one on the left, this Shoemates pharmacy sign, like an old pharmacy chain in San Francisco, there's maybe like 150 pieces that I kind of individually traced out to reform the shape and really get the spirit of it. And this one on the right was a terrazzo piece, a C from Carl's Pastry, which if you've waited in line at Tartine Bakery, you've seen this many times. And I probably drew about 500, I think, or 600 pieces to form the terrazzo patterns for the floor and for the letter itself. Three-dimensional letters, so letters that have like real depth to them where it's not just painted, are really fun as well, and a challenge of how do you best kind of show off that depth? How do you use it to your advantage? So one thing I've been really having fun with lately is light bulbs, signs that are lit by bulbs, and playing around with the forms of the bulbs and the shadows that they cast, and trying to capture those in their best light. During the daytime, you also get a pretty dramatic effect from shadows, so they can make letters seem much bolder or more interesting. Or for neon, there's this kind of fun thing that can happen, with really intense sunlight, where the shadow of the path of the neon sort of reveals a hidden letter. You get kind of like a bonus letter form during the day out of it that can sometimes be more interesting than the initial presentation itself. But some letters are also just kind of better at night, and exploring those kind of styles and renderings is really fun and a whole different kind of challenge for me. Real letters also have imperfections, and I would love to be doing more of these. I haven't done too many of them, but a neon sign that's broken or a letter that's kind of bent out of shape tends to stand out more because it's different. It's deviating from what your expectation is. And lastly, there are some where it's hard to separate where the letter ends and the background begins. There's an almost symbiotic relationship between them. So this L on the left from French restaurant Le Central, the L I think is really effective because you have this very orthogonal grid behind it. It forms this really nice contrast to how sort of wide and loopy the letter form is. And the V from the Verdi Club on the right, I don't know what's going on here, but I love it, and it's pretty amazing. So something I haven't kind of mentioned is all of the recreations that I'm doing in a vector UI software called Sketch. So all the UX folks in the room are probably familiar with it, and that surprises people sometimes. It's the tool that I was most familiar with after years of kind of not using Illustrator and InDesign. I had a license for Sketch. It's a lot cheaper, and I've come to love it for this kind of work. Like I try to go back and do this stuff in Illustrator now, and I wouldn't even know where to begin. And that kind of means that when I'm recreating type that's hand painted or that's been cast out of a form, my process is very different from how they work. And the forms I think are pretty interesting though as well, of what does this sort of interim stage of this recreation process look like. And when you're working in digital tools and having a difference, a lot of shapes or union things, you get these sort of offcuts, these shapes that you make just to help you with getting to a more clean final form. And after a while, I started saving out those interim steps as I was working. So I'd have this just little record for myself of what were the steps I took to recreate a letter form. And this can vary a lot for something that's painted or something that, you know, has lighting and effects and needs to convey more of a sense of depth. But these have been really fun for me to just look back on and see, over the course of a single letter, you know, how many steps went into it, how much work um, did it take. So having done this for a few years and kind of organizing my life outside of work around this a bit, I don't think it would be a surprise for me to say that doing this project has really informed how I've learned about San Francisco and how I kind of understand it. One example of that historically is you walk around enough parts of the city and you start to notice all of these old movie theater signs or you know, just theaters in general. And we have quite a good collection in San Francisco of signs that are beautifully preserved or still standing. But you know, you start digging into it more and realize that San Francisco had close to 100 movie theaters at one point. Even for such a small city, there was a great love of cinema here, and the sort of golden age of theater development and um, attention in San Francisco also kind of coincided with when neon was really taking off here. And so even theaters like the Alhambra that had a kind of channel letter with like light bulbs, they replaced it. They swapped it out with a channeled neon sign, probably within 10 years of the theater opening, to kind of take advantage of what was then like very modern technology. So the interest in kind of lettering helped me learn about the history of the city. Um, what's also nice is being able to do these kinds of views of old and new. So using the same kind of form, the same kind of materials. These are both bakeries. The one on the left is from the floor of a bakery that operated in kind of the early 1900s, and on the right, from, you know, the late 2010s, and just seeing how uses of the same material have changed over time. My landmarks around the city are also just signs and places that I think about. So when I think about Chinatown, you know, I think about the sign for the Great Star Theater, or the Star and Golden Star Radio, or the amazing light bulbs from the Empress Fine Arts sign. So it's kind of become a wayfinding point for me walking around. And in talking about Chinatown, I also want to highlight that there is a lot of great, you know, non-English type around the city. I'm not, you know, I'm barely observant enough to notice details in like Latin characters. So I'm certainly no expert in what's interesting in other written languages, but I do have uh, some letters from other cultures, you know, other writing scripts that I've found throughout the city that I found personally interesting, and would love to find a way to appropriately showcase those as well. Um, one thing that I worried about, especially because the nature of the project is recreation, and not all of it is recreating, you know, past very historical work, but also some current work, and hopefully spotlighting it, was what the reaction might be from businesses or from artists in particular, or from the type community. You know, I don't know if this is heresy or if this is interesting. What's been great about having an Instagram account, and what I wish I had done sooner with that, is just getting feedback from people and from businesses and being able to tag them. So the the response from businesses when they choose to respond is great to see. Like, I'm glad that they're enjoying it, and for me it's been a great way to learn about so many of the small businesses in the city, and I'd love to be able to share some of their stories a little bit more if they're open to it. And it's something I try to do in every Instagram post I put up. This post is one that New Bohemia Signs commented on. It's hard to walk around San Francisco without seeing their work, which is just like a testament to the volume and quality that they do. It's that it's not immediately obvious, you know, what is a New Bohemia sign, because there's not a particular style that I would associate with them. But Damon kind of went back through some of my posts of their work I'd shared, and left some really great stories about where the inspiration for something came from. And, you know, I'd love to invite him and other artists whose work I've featured and tried to tag to do the same if they were interested. And a great sort of directional or vision cue for me was seeing the great work that the couple behind SF Neon, Randall and Al, does. Their walking tours were so instrumental to me early on in kind of seeing what the community who appreciates typography is like and where that appreciation can take you. They've been a great inspiration to me. Their tours are super informational. And once the world kind of gets back to normal, if you haven't had the chance to go on one of their tours, I would definitely recommend that. The last thing I wanted to mention was just the reality of kind of doing a project like this. I think from the outside, or when you just have the outlet of an Instagram account, it can seem really shiny, and it's definitely not. And my hope is that in sharing a bit of the journey, it could be an inspiration to people to kind of get unstuck or pursue something that they're interested in a similar vein. So, I've had an interest in lettering for a long time and have been looking for an outlet for it. And this project has certainly not been an overnight success or kind of wildly popular. It's something that I've built up slowly over time and had to really kind of turn towards intrinsic motivation for to keep going with it. What helped me a lot was committing to doing it daily in 2018, because it meant I had to get a lot more serious about how I was tracking the work I was doing. I had to start treating it like almost like a fitness routine or something. So I made this crazy spreadsheet for myself. It didn't start so crazy, but it began as a way for me to just keep track of everywhere I had been in the city that I thought looked interesting and that I might want to draw, and to track my workflow. If I was going to post every single day for the year, did I have enough letters to get going? Did I need to go back out and walk around new parts of the city? I started keeping a Google map of everywhere that I wanted to go visit and everywhere that I'd been, so I could make sure that I wasn't over optimizing for a single part of the city. So that's all I got for you. Once again, the kind of main things I just wanted to get some feedback on were what was interesting to you. If you were interested in a book or sort of other artifacts for this, what would the ideal version of that look like for you? And what have I missed? I'm sort of an outsider to the typography world. It's not my day to day. I'm not thinking super deeply about it. So I know that there's versions of this and aspects that I haven't really explored. And if those are very, very appealing, I'm happy to take a closer look at those as well. Thanks. And feel free to reach out to me on Instagram if you have feedback after the fact or questions. Would be happy to answer them.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kunal. I do hope everyone is applauding at home because some really beautiful work. And I just want to make a few quick comments before I open it up to anyone who has questions or feedback, if indeed you do. The first is, I think there was a collective gasp of joy amongst our whole audience when you said you did all of this in Sketch. I think something about that really resonated. Especially for someone like myself, I've spent a good portion of my career in Illustrator. It's only in the last couple of years I've been using Sketch, recently gotten into Figma, as I'm sure a lot of people have. But there's something about seeing the use of those programs applied to something very artistic like this, as opposed to just product design. And I don't say just product design as if to imply that there's not a lot of talent and design that goes into that itself. But I think the way those programs were marketed were for being really more utilitarian in the way of getting really quick prototypes from screen to application, and that is very much their strength. And what I think you've done here is shown a validation of the idea that the program itself, the way those programs are built, and Sketch in particular, because I love Sketch, though I am warming to Figma, I have to say. There's a lot going on under the hood in how they work that really allows you to create stuff beyond product designs, beyond wireframes, beyond stuff meant for the web, and really into what you're doing here. So it's a minor process detail, but there's something I just so love that aspect is attached to this project. The second thing I want to say is I think you showed this at really the right time that resonated emotionally for me, because looking at these images reminded me of how much I miss just walking around my city and kind of seeing this stuff on a daily basis. Because I recognize so many of these letter forms, and even if I can't pin down where they are geographically, there's something about them that speaks to me about, like, I've lived here for 16 years, and they, like, these letter forms, you know, they are this city to me. They form the collective you know, aesthetic quality of this city. And that brings me to my final point. Is you said you moved out here from the East Coast, and in putting all of this together, I'm just curious if, from your point of view, because I very much love both East Coast and West Coast, and how cities on both of those coasts have evolved over the years in terms of design. But is there anything you noticed in this project that really gave San Francisco or the West Coast kind of its own unique aesthetic character compared to what you grew up with or experienced on the East Coast? I know maybe it's a bit of a broad question, but I am just curious, like, because, you know, you really kind of focused in on the details, and if there was an aspect of, after doing this for so long, if you've kind of started to notice there's a quality of San Francisco in these letter forms, compared to other places that you've been.
Yeah, it's a little hard to answer because I think I didn't approach my time. So I lived in New York City for a long time, and my interest or my observation was not trained towards type. It was trained towards buildings, towards architecture. So that was my background before going into digital. And and so now when I go back or wherever I travel, it's definitely on my mind. I think some of the things that helped me kind of do that here were the weather. I think a lot of signs are in a lot better shape in San Francisco than elsewhere. I think there's a lot more preserved, especially with all of the beautiful tile work in the city. Really stood out to me as something that felt very San Francisco to me compared to what I'd seen elsewhere, and just the way into understanding the history behind some of the places, especially for places that are long gone, but you know, where ghost signs or examples remain. It just helped me understand, like, what was the sort of formation of San Francisco, or how have things changed here or not changed here over time. So it's a little bit hard for me to say, is there a difference in style or in technique from one place to the other. But there are aspects that I think help me do this project here versus doing the same version of it somewhere else.
Yeah. Jeff Kellum in the chat, he did have a question about, he said, things to think about include notes on the background and history for each image, interviews with the original designers, if that's even possible, if they're still around, and something like maps showing location. Jeff, if you're there, do you want to elaborate on your question at all, or does that pretty much cover it?
That was mostly it. Just things to think about if you're going to, depending on how you want to present the book. There's lots of different ways you could decide to design it. You could go through the imagery, main copybook, but I always like to have stuff that has a little bit of backstory to it. And you should include your own story, of course. But while you were showing the maps, it's a crazy project in itself, but I like the idea of a stylized maps or multiple maps showing your drawings of the letters as markers, possibly showing your own walking paths for different ideas along that too.
Cool, thank you. Delv was actually asking me, are you familiar with Jim Parkinson and his sign painting in the city? And Delv, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that at all for Canal?
No, I'm not.
Yeah, Jim Parkinson is kind of he's done a lot of work. He designed the Rolling Stone masthead or logo, but San Francisco hometown hero.
Yeah, he's been doing, all along, he's been doing a lot of paintings of signs that he finds along the road or in the town or here and there. And they're pretty gorgeous. I think that he's also working on a book about his work, and those will be included. I'm not sure when that would be out though.
Okay.
Oh, here, I'm going to post a URL.
Yeah, might be worth it to just reach out to him and see if he's at all interested in collaborating. One
No, I can put you. I can put you in touch with him if you like.
There you go.
Oh, that'd be fantastic.
Winston says controversial idea. I would prefer to see these as big posters than a book. I'm gonna actually split the difference and say I think you should make the book, but the pages should be as big as posters. So that will definitely be a coffee table piece. Silas asks, have you ever done research on some of the signs as they appeared in other time periods? And Silas, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that question at all, or just put that out there for Kunal.
Well, I really love this project. Like my heart. Oh man,
Thank you.
this is amazing. And I second what was said earlier by Cass. Like this really makes me miss walking around. Because you're right. Like there's like that SF Muni sign that you first showed. It's like, oh my gosh, that's just like out at the train graveyard or something. I think what I mean by my question is like looking back through like some of these, because some of these things are new, and then some of these are very like, it's like archaeology. Like this, you've found this thing from the 40s or the 30s that someone stone carved and then painted. And is there any are there any photo reference like at the SF Historical Society or the library? Like you said, like there has been a culture of neon and sign painting. I don't know, like I love history, and it seems like you have an eye for history. So it's just like thinking about that in terms of the book. Like I like the context a lot, like seeing where you found them and what the area is like.
Yeah, I had started, I got a San Francisco library card to kind of do that sort of historical exploration. And so I've been going through the photo archives a little bit, and relying a lot on Google Books actually for references to old businesses, like all of the old business directories for like contractors or insurance people or old newspaper ads, just to get some context on what these places may have been in the past. Photos themselves have been a little hard to come by of like the buildings or enough clarity, but where I can find them, I'm certainly open to that. I would say I'm still a novice with kind of navigating the online photo archives available. So any leads there for other like sources to check out would be appreciated.
Absolutely, this is awesome, man.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk in the chat about the desire for both a book and something in poster form. And I'm going to break protocol here and actually turn my camera on. Hi, everybody, and show you that there is precedent for this. So I do have this really rad Art of Atari book on my bookshelf. I'm letting you all into my home office here. But as included with that was this very nice Art of Atari poster collection, which came along with it. So that just might be something to think about. And I'm going to leave you all again. So goodbye. Yeah, so a couple other points on here. Alex says, the forms you're making are quite interesting. The stories behind them are very compelling. When he thinks about them as a physical artifact, he would preserve your source images and the stories that you've encountered along the way. The letters stand alone, but your presentation of this was very captivating. Anything you want to add to that, Alex?
Not necessarily. I just think you taking it like from start to finish, it just makes it so much richer than seeing, the single form at once. Like it's interesting, but like, yeah, it's really about like, I think the comments and clearly the dialogue that you're experiencing on your Instagram page, like how do you take that into a book artifact? Because I think that's just an important part that would be missed if you didn't have it.
Yeah. Cool. So yeah, no, very positive response. Definitely want you to develop this out. And I think what is great about what you've shown us is because they started as individual graphics, they have longevity outside of a book. You can make posters, you can make postcards, you can make mugs. I don't want to get too, swag with you, but I think you could apply these to a wide range of stuff, and everyone collectively will give you the Futurama Fry meme of "shut up and take my money." Because I'm certainly ready to hand some of it over. But I do think, yeah, for everyone else, definitely follow Letters of San Francisco on Instagram. Kunal, if you want to kind of solicit feedback or keep in touch with people individually, do you want to put a contact, or should people contact you on Instagram? Like, how do you prefer to keep in touch with everybody?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I'll just drop my email address into the chat
Awesome.
as well.
Yeah, really looking forward to seeing how this comes along.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Kunal, for sharing your work. Hope I'm going to give you another little applause reaction on my screen up here. And we're going to move on now to our last critique, which is going to be Sumi. So Sumi actually has been to a few Type Thursdays now, and she also has the added benefit of being a Type Thursday volunteer. This is her first month with us, and she's done some cool work that she's going to present to us. Sumi, are you there?
Yes.
Awesome.
Hi.
Hi, Sumi. Yeah, thank you so much for sticking in. So she has this project here called Sinuous Stamps, and this is a postage stamp collection for American sculptor Ruth Asawa. And I'm assuming this is the same Ruth Asawa as the Ruth Asawa School of the Arts over in Twin Peaks. Am I correct?
Yes.
Okay.
She, yeah, the one who has her exhibition up in De Young Museum. She has like beautiful 15 artwork pieces there.
Yeah. So you've done a type treatment, and you're asking the question, is this type treatment good to put on stamps, or is readability on such a small space going to be an issue? So with that, I'm going to stop sharing and kick it over to you to share your screen.
Yeah. One sec. Okay. Okay. Can you see my screen?
We can, yes.
Okay, first of all, I want to thank you guys for have it online, because my parents and my family members can able to attend this event from India, my boyfriend from Indiana, and my friends, college friends from Micah. Well, a little bit about me. So my name is Mangla Bishnoi, and I did my MFA from Maryland Institute College of Arts, and I just finished it last year only, and I came to San Francisco like 10 months back. And I've been working as a graphic designer at Landor, and recently I just started working as a freelancer for 2-3 different firms. So I created this series of stamps, and I named them Senior Stamps because seniors means having a lot of curves and turns. So the brief about this project was basically to take an artist and create stamps for that artist. This was the first time, like this is like my first typography project, which I designed last year. And then also I have never designed stamps. So I was just wondering, like when you design a poster or when you design, a book, you have a lot of surface and space where you are independently making something. You have so much freedom. But when you design a stamp, oh my god, the space is so small. Like you lose all your patience, and you have just that little space to play with whatever you want to include in that space. So I took my inspiration from Ruth Asawa. She's an American sculptor, and she basically makes these beautiful pieces, like art pieces, and she describes them as, I was interested in it because of the economy of a line, making something in space and closing it without blocking it out. It is still transparent. I realized that if I was going to make these forms which interlock and interweave, it can only be done with a line, because a line can go anywhere. So when I read this statement, so I thought there are so many words from this that can help me design my own stamps by taking inspiration from her work. So words like line, transparent, interlock, interweave, and forms, like I just thought of picking these words and try to incorporate them in my designs. So these are a few of her art pieces that are still alive in the Young Museum. It's like a permanent exhibition. But major things that I noticed in her art pieces were like she's playing a lot with wire structures, like she's interweaving them and stuff. So that's how I took my inspiration. Like her art forms are so organic. they are organic, abstract, but geometric too. They have a lot of dramatic shadows that add to the installation and make it look more live by having that 3D effect coming out in the space area. Also, all these art structures have lines of that are just going anywhere. They are just interweaving. They're playing with each other. So those were my elements that I took forward. And while designing my stems, so main variables that I had to keep in mind were like proportion, type, weight, and legibility. Legibility was the major challenge for me, because it's so small. Again, you want to express whatever you want to tell to the viewer, but then again you have such a small area to tell the whole story. So my first stem, basically it has these I made like a mesh, a pattern that's like a see-through, but I try to incorporate this color that makes it look like a wire pattern, a wired pattern. So I basically took her initial, that's the letter R, and I just interlocked and interweaved it to make this pattern, and then incorporated it in the stem. My second stem was like playing with different lines, like, so because her shapes, her art pieces have a lot of geometry and lines, so that's what I have tried to incorporate here. So there I made this typographic treatment where I've put her names by using these different shapes and having this blending mode with lines, and then putting it on the stem. My third design is also a lot about shapes and lines. They all are again playing with each other, but I mean, how can I stretch the typography so that it looks 3D, it comes out of the stem? So that's what I was trying here. So yeah, this is again like the line treatment, but with typography. This one was so when you look at a pieces, so they have this composition of going from small to big, and then again small back to small, and then again big. So that's what I was trying to treat here with the typography. I try to create this composition then and have it in my stem like one of her art pieces. This is like one of my favorite ones. So in this, I tried to create this typeface treatment, and I was trying to have incorporation of origami. Like, so I made these graphical elements that should look like you have like origami treatment made from a paper, but I've done it graphically, and then I've tried to incorporate letters onto it that explains her name and her type of art. So yeah. And then this is like my whole collection, which I kept together to see whether the colors are working well together, whether they look a part of the same series, whether it has that impact, whether you can relate it with the artist's artwork. So I was just wondering whether it is doing justice to her art pieces or not. So this is like a mock-up I prepared with a stamp on it. And then my major questions were, do you think these stamps are legible enough? Because I started freelancing with a studio called Studio A, and there I have to design stamps. So this was like my first time playing with stamps. So I wanted to know, where am I, like, is there something that I am missing? Is it not even legible enough, so that I can keep those points in my head and, create my work on my new projects. Also, I was wondering, like, when we think about branding or we do poster making or something like that, so every time we want to make it dynamic, so to make it dynamic we try to introduce a lot of AR and VR techniques to it, or we try to make it 3D in Cinema 4D, or like do some playful stuff around it. But whenever I think of a stamp, it's like a beautiful small piece of paper on a boring mail. So how can we make it more educational? How can we make it more interesting? Is there a way that we can introduce some sort of dynamism to it? So yeah, those were my questions to you guys.
Awesome. Really, really beautiful work here. Sumi, can you actually go back? Oh, sorry. Can you go back to the screen? I think it was 2 slides before this where you showed all of the stamps together, so we can have kind of an overview of that. Yeah. So
yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to sit on this slide because I think this is best representative of kind of everything that you've done. I think you've done a lot of really interesting things and a really beautiful job of translating, I think, the character of her sculpture into these kind of two-dimensional designs, and in a non-predictable way. I like that each stamp kind of has its own, you know, it speaks to a different technique that she used, and I can easily see, like, you know, different, you know, sculptures that she's made based on the work that you showed me in here. And I think too, the thing that is obviously an issue for me is I'm looking at these blown up on a screen, and I really like them as individual works of art. But what you're talking about is the context they're intended for, which is a postage stamp, which is extremely small. Is you're viewing it in a very different way. And now I think you can still get away with a lot on a postage stamp, because I've bought stamps from the post office that have some pretty intricate designs on them. And obviously designers, they paint these things, or they make these things on really large formats, and then they shrink them down to postage stamp size. So that's definitely not unprecedented. I'm just curious, like, at this point, have you printed these out at like stamp size, or seen any examples of them, of what they would look like, you know, as a stamp, and being able to glean some insight from, you know, something that's only like an inch or an inch and a half across? And has that informed your design decisions at all?
I did try to. I did printed it in my college, and you know, the most successful one was this fifth one with the bold typography on it, because the ones with the thin lines, I mean, some lines were visible, but in the printer most of the lines were not visible so evidently. So that's what I was struggling with a lot. I was trying also, like, I feel like it's better to use sans serif fonts than the serif ones, because again, on the serif, the slab, like the small you know, the thin lines, they are not very visible in that printing, that size of printing.
Yeah, it's a little tricky to say, because the balance I'm hitting is I like them as designs on their own, set large, the way you're showing them to me. But as to whether or not they're functional as a stamp, you know, as a stamp size, I mean, there's really only one way to see that, and that's to see them at stamp size. So I guess the best thing I can do is open it up to the crowd that's here, and see if anyone has any input or wants to weigh in kind of on what Sumi's showing here.
Yeah.
And feel free to just shout out at this point. Definitely people saying some really nice work. The thin one lines look like they would be almost impossible to print. We got a comment, and I think that's definitely true depending on how you print. I've definitely seen some stamps that, while they're not like sort of official USPS postage stamps, they're works of art that are printed at postage stamp size, but use a much higher quality printing. So I'm not quite sure, like what is the intent of these? Because you're not actually making like a postal service set of stamps to go out there at this point, right?
Now I'm going to make for some other projects. So this was one of my college projects, but because I'm going to make it for USPS ahead, or like for other projects, so that's why I wanted to know, like, what are the things that I can improve on, so that I can keep that in my mind while working on the next project.
Okay. Jeff says, assume you might have already done this, but look at the designs at the same size, as well as the viewing distances you expect. Yeah, I think that speaks to the idea of putting these in the postage stamp size. Carrie says, for example, instead of showing the whole name, you could zoom in on one letter. Carrie, if you're here, do you want to elaborate on that at all?
Oh, yeah, sure. Like the one that says line art, for example, you could maybe like zoom in and just have the A, and that would be really cool. Or the one where you have the pattern, you could do the corner of the pattern instead of the whole. Like you could just do a zoomed in version of, and it would help make the lines a little thicker, maybe.
Yeah, that's a very good idea, actually.
Yeah, they're really cool.
Thank you.
And I like all your colors. They're like nice and neutral, and they're like calming. I like them.
Thank you.
No, I think, yeah, as far as color palette, I think you really captured the quality of some of her sculpture work with here. Delve reminds us that machines they have for printing US postage stamps are capable of very fine printing. So,
Mhm.
and Antonio says, definitely do these line works in different, actually, Antonio, do you want to weigh in and ask Sumi your question?
Sure. I think that it's definitely necessary to physically print these, and definitely you can go from like, what does it look like with 3 lines to what does it look like to what you have now, and actually print them and see how these actually print, knowing that whatever printer you have is probably going to be much worse than a professional printer would be. So you can actually gauge how much of that detail you can actually keep in your designs. And I think you'll be surprised that even though you'll need to simplify, you'll be able to retain a lot of that detail and you won't really lose the concept.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, when I was just trying with the one letter or, minimal lines, I was not getting that feeling of interweaving or like lines playing with each other. It's like, okay, one of the 2D text there. But again, how to show that whole concept of composition, like things coming out in space area and stuff.
One thing that Roy chimed in on, and I think is worth considering, is I really love all of these as individual works of art, but one thing they don't have right now is some degree of standardization, like a common element across all of them that implies they're part of the same set. And he was saying the Forever USA, like a common element like Forever USA might be set in an identical font if it's supposed to be, a set. And Roy, I don't know if you want to elaborate on that at all. Or speak to
that? Sure. And then besides like some common elements, another style is like, to me, when I see the first 3, they have a border, and the color that is using in the middle is also bleeded on the edge. But like when you see number 4, it has very different style than the others, and 5 and 6 they are together because they have white or unprinted border. Maybe if I assume number 6 is a beige color paper. Yes, so that's why I just see like a few different groups over here, honestly.
Yeah,
I don't
true.
know if you really mean to be a set. Yeah,
no, it completely makes sense. Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
I just want to say my personal favorite is the one in the upper right there, the wire in a circle. And especially when you set that in a square and showed how it matched that very octagonal pattern, I thought that was really lovely. So,
thank you. Yeah, but
cool.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead. If anyone else wants to continue the conversation with you, or weigh in on more, is there a place you want to be contacted at, or a handle you want to give out?
Yeah, I'll just share my email ID with you all. Thank you guys for all your suggestions. It's really helpful.
Thank you so much, Sumi. All right. Okay, so we are going to wrap this up here. Really great work from everybody who has come in today. And now we're going to move on to Winston. This is Winston's Corner, and we did this for a little bit of levity coming out of here. But Winston just wanted to take a few minutes to chat at the end. He obviously chatted with you at the beginning before I came in. But Winston, what do you got?
Well, let me just say, I mean, that was so rad. I can't believe we did this thing online.
Sorry, Winston, can I just ask that everyone who's not Winston right now mute their microphone, because I'm getting a lot of echo on my end.
Yeah. Is this better?
Yeah. It's like running a radio show.
Is this better?
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, it's nice to hear my voice echo, but this is a little bit easier to decipher, I think. Yeah, I just want to say we did it. We ran this thing online. I think this went mostly okay. I'm curious, this would be a great time for everyone to hop in the chat and tell me what you guys think about this online version of it. Did it work? Is there anything else we could improve? How should we do this differently next time? All that. Please put all your notes on that in the chat right now, because would love to know about that. And yeah, just thank you guys so much for trusting us and doing this and giving us an hour and a half of your valuable time. I really, really, really appreciate it. At the end of our event here, I did just want to give out a little bit of promotion to our other chapters. Literally, Type Thursday Bogota had an event tonight. Type Thursday Los Angeles had an event tonight. And Type Thursday New York City had a Twitter interview with the Arabic calligrapher Will Marcos. To find those events, I'm going to point you to their individual Instagram accounts. I'm assuming everyone in this chat follows Type Thursday San Francisco on Instagram. If you just follow Type Thursday New York, London, Bogota, and Madrid are all very, very active right now. So I would highly encourage all you guys to get on that. And of course, next week we're having a a Twitter interview with Paula Scher. Needs no introduction, and that'll be done, I believe, by Type Thursday New York. So please do check that out. The other thing I wanted to promote that I felt sort of obliged to, because I think these people are amazing, is the Letterform Archive has now opened up their online archive for everyone. They just did this last week. I'm sure everyone on this call knows what an amazing resource the Letterform Archive is. And I just want to give a bit of self-promotion that they're doing this right now. So if you're, at home, wishing your book collection was a little bit larger and you had a few more issues of Emigre magazine or something like that, I'm very happy to point you towards the online archive, which has all that stuff out there. I just saw Jeff just posted the link on that in the chat. So thank you so much, Jeff. And yeah,
we did get a question in the chat.
Oh yeah.
When and where will this recording be posted for anyone?
That is a great question. I will tell you, I do not know exactly when it will be posted, but I will say for sure that we will be sending out an email with this recording. How about that? It'll certainly be uploaded somewhere, and everyone on this chat is on our email list, because otherwise you wouldn't have known where to go. So you will have this recording in your email boxes soon.
And you want to speak to a second about how much we raised?
Oh yes, how did I forget this? Sorry. Okay, everyone.
Slide for you, dude. And
I know. So as you guys saw, because this was a bit of a different format, we went to donation-based pricing and decided to donate all of our ticket prices to the Bay Area Safety Net Fund. And we actually raised more than this. I sent this number to Cass maybe like an hour before the event. We've actually raised $306 for the Bay Area Safety Net Fund. I had to check that number right before I said that. And once again, all these proceeds are going to a Bay Area performing artists who, like musicians, performing artists, all those type of people. So if you guys donated tonight, thank you guys so much. Your money will be going straight to them. And I'm also going to give them a plug that I'm sure they could use some more money. Just Google Bay Area Artist Safety Net Fund and you'll find them, because I think there's a lot of people who need a bit of help right now, and this money will go straight to them. So yeah, thank you.
For sure. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Winston. Brian asked, what about the poster project? If you were here last month, we started a poster project for every type where we're featuring the word Thursday in a different language by a different designer every month. Obviously, that's something we would like to keep doing, current circumstances being what they are. Not as easy, but rest assured, if and when this passes, we will have a poster for every month of this year. You may get all of them in December, but you will have a poster for every month of this year. We will work it out. Just obviously with everything else that's going on, we need to find a way to get back to normal, especially when it comes to printing and coordinating other people. So that's going to do it for Type Thursday tonight. Like Winston said, you can follow us, keep up with us. The next event is tentatively scheduled for April 16th. Like I said, it will either be another online one where we will learn from what happened tonight and carry that over into next month, or we'll wait and see if this is something we do in person. Either way, we know it's been a struggle, but we also know that people are keeping on, spending a lot of time on Zoom day in and day out. So we really appreciate you coming to spend some time with us tonight this year as well. We look forward to this every month and seeing you and hearing your ideas and seeing beautiful work from our community. And we just want to keep this going as much as we can, especially in the current circumstances. So on that note, I hope y'all have another drink, cap off your night, and go into the weekend feeling like you've seen some beautiful work. And we will hopefully see you all online or in Meetspace next month. So thank you very much.
Thanks, you guys. Thanks, everyone, for joining.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Bye.
everyone.
Thank you. Cheers.
Yeah, this was great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody. Really enjoyed it.
Awesome. Thanks for joining in, you guys.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.
All right, so the rest of us are just going to stay on and drink now, right?
Well, no, if I leave, then I have to close it out to everyone. So that's why I don't want to. Seems like it's actually just about our team. Yeah, maybe if our team could stay on for 5 minutes. Thank you guys so much. I mean, what do you guys think? How did that go?
It was good. I think, yeah, like we can do a recap later when I think we're exhausted. But
yeah,
there's things that worked and things that we can streamline. But all in all, I'm glad we were able to pull it off. So,
no kidding.
Kaz, you did a killer job as the diamond lead.
Thank you. Yeah, I don't know if you noticed, but my mom was in the room tonight.
Yeah.
I saw that on the attendee list.
Yeah, she didn't.
Like, who is this other Fornelski?
And she fell off relatively early. I think the subject matter may have not been up her alley, but that was kind of interesting. So.
Yeah, my dad was in for a little
bit. How do you guys feel?
Good.
Yeah.
It was awesome, guys.
All right. Well, I have put in enough Zoom time for today, so I think I'm
yeah. You guys deserve rest. Great job.
Right.
Yeah, thanks for your help, everyone.
All right.
Yeah, of course. Talk soon.
Cool.
Bye.
See you guys.